National Data Privacy Day. Are we in control of our data? Is data privacy just a myth after all? Or is there the new law will actually solve for some questions? What are the things that all of you must know? We tell you and refresh your memory on that on the program today.
And then, as we told you, we take you down to Maharashtra, where a few regions are grappling with GBS. And we take a look at what it is, what is the Guillain-Barré syndrome, what are the symptoms, what you can do to protect yourself, and what are the things that your community should be doing. We'll take a look at all of this right here on the show.
Also coming up on the program, we take you through an excerpt of an interview with Kangana Ranaut. She opens up about portraying Indira Gandhi in emergency. Also says, I want the Gandhi family to watch the movie.
This morning, we're going to be talking about something that we think affects all of us, our right to privacy in a digital world. Now, India's been buzzing with discussions about the new Digital Personal Data Protection Bill 2023. It's said that it could transform how we handle and protect our data in this country. But what's really in the bill? Why is it possibly a big deal for you, for me? And how is it changing things from the way they stand? We're going to break it down for you. First, our data, our rules. The bill says that it ensures that data can't be collected without explicit consent. So unless you agree to give something on an app, your data cannot be collected. Platforms must tell us why they need our information, and they can only use it for the purpose that we've agreed to. That's a very important point. Secondly, the bill enforces data storage limitations, meaning that companies can't hoard our information forever.
And once the purpose is served, they have to delete it. That's the important underlining point here. And number three, the power to the people. By that we mean that we'll have the right to access our data, correct our data, or even ask platforms to erase it. So we own our data. The bill also gives us the right to say, no, I don't want my data collected. And here's the big one, strict penalties for platforms that mishandle or leak our data. Fines up to 250 crore for non-compliance as well with the law. But it's not just about the law, right? This bill puts a spotlight on digital literacy as well. It's time for all of us to become smarter about how we share and protect our data. And to talk to us about that, we thought we'll bring in somebody who's actually worked on this bill, not just in Parliament, but in the courts as well. Joining us now is former Minister for State for Electronics and Information, Rajeev Chandrasekhar. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning. Very quickly, wanted to understand that your approach and the law that you have taken to the court really talks about and states it very clearly that privacy is a fundamental right. You've battled this both in court and in Parliament as well. Where do you think today in 2025 India stands vis-a-vis the world on data protection?
You're absolutely right. It's been a long journey to get to where we are. When I started this as a parliamentarian in 2010 and started talking about privacy and the need for citizens' rights to privacy to be protected, there was a significant amount of pushback, and there was a lot of people mockingly referring to this as some elitist view of what is required and what is not required. And I remember, very, very senior editors saying this is all nonsense. And then, of course, there was the Aadhaar click that essentially said that this was all not required. But look, fast forward to 2025, and we've gone through a very important landmark judgment and discovery by the Supreme Court in 2017 August that effectively said that privacy, the right to privacy, is a fundamental right for citizens, like right to free speech, right to life and liberty, right to religion. So we are squarely in pretty unambiguous territory about the fact that every Indian citizen can demand and expect from a platform, from a service provider on the internet, from the government, the right to maintain his or her data in absolutely confidential and with respecting his or her privacy. So that is where we are. Now, to codify that, the government made a couple of attempts. to come up with the legislation way back in 2018. Fortunately for me, and this is obviously the stars coming together and maybe my good karma and my Prime Minister, he gave me an opportunity in 2021 to look at that legislation. And we basically junked what was already done and replaced it with a far more contemporary, far better piece of legislation that is simpler.
But could we ask you, there are so many apps where it feels like if you don't give your data, if you don't agree right in the beginning to share your data, whether it's something as simple as your location to other data like photos, videos, if you don't share it, the app doesn't work properly. Is data privacy in that sense a myth?
Look, it's pretty clear in the law that nobody can deny you service because you did not give consent for the data that they sought, which went beyond the delivery of the service. Now, let's assume for a minute, let's use quick commerce as an example. You mentioned it. What do they need from you? Your credit card number and your address to deliver the product.
Right.
If they start asking you what is your date of birth, what is your grandmother's name, what is your grandfather's name, and your age, it goes beyond what is absolutely minimum required. The law specifies you can only seek what is required for you to deliver the service. And if they ask for something more and you say no to it, they cannot deny you the service. This is what the law says. And if anybody who does anything beyond that, they will be ultra virus violating the law. And that is simple. You go complain to the Data Protection Board and they will duke it out with the Data Protection Board and either pay a big check for being violating the law or learn to respect the law. So there is certainly, I agree with you, Sonal, there will be a lot of platforms trying to push the boundary and say, how much of what I was doing earlier can I continue to do? How much can I bet on consumers not knowing their rights? How much can I bet on people who are quick commerce who want to buy something, not really looking at the consent in detail and basically agreeing in a hurry? All these are possible scenarios, but as I've always said, in the digital space, laws evolve, consumer behavior and consumer knowledge and consumer rights, evolve through a detailed understanding. And I have no doubt at some point, all consumers will start understanding very clearly how to make platforms behave consistently with the law or approach the Data Protection Board to make sure platforms behave.
You're right when you say that laws evolve, the digital space constantly evolving at a scaringly fast pace. But if you look at the last couple of years, we've seen some major penalties also come in. Take, for example, the $1.4 billion settlement that Meta had to do. But that happened in states. Uber had to also sort of hit to $324 million penalty actually for falling, not being able to protect the entire, the driver details and all of those things. We've seen some, a lot of landmark judgments come in, but none of them in India. Why don't we hear of these cases in India when we are claiming that our system is so robust?
No, so let's be clear. Those big penalties that you are hearing about are in the US in particular are to do with competition, and these are FTC penalties. In Europe, for example, the competition laws there have made sure that Google and Meta have been penalized for abusing their market power and violating GDPR in some cases in terms of privacy. But a lot of these huge penalties are to do with the fact that they are, because of the very nature of their size and scale, abusing their market power. And I must bring to your attention and to your viewers' attention, the Competition Commission in India very bravely, despite all the power of Google, went through and found a case against Google where, in terms of abuse of market power. So the Competition Commission has established a precedent in India and has signaled to these platforms that India's law and India's jurisprudence is also rapidly evolving to keep in pace with all of these challenges of anti-competitive behavior, abuse of market power, and with the new data protection law and the rules now enacted, also violation of individual privacy.
Okay.
Tell us what your thoughts are, because you've mentioned the US right now. Donald Trump back in office, he's made a lot of statements around data privacy, around data and tech itself. How do you think that's going to bode for the rest of the world?
Look, I think one thing that President, and I've been asked this question before his swearing in, after his election results, and most recently, just a few days ago, I think is good in a lot of ways because it signals that he's doubling down on tech and innovation as an important part of the global economic landscape, the US economic growth, etc., etc. That really is our Prime Minister and our government's vision for the last decade, that innovation, the digital economy is where it's at. A lot of the growth and prosperity that we will get as a nation will come from that. And I think that is what President Trump is also signaling by bringing on board or aligning himself with a lot of these big tech superstars. But having said that, I think we can also safely assume that there will be challenges in our relationship because Elon Musk and all of these people have a fairly American view about the fact that the laws of America must apply to their platforms, and therefore there is the need, as you saw with his recent squabble in Brazil, that it doesn't matter what the local laws are, that US laws and US First Amendment rights must prevail. That is of course not the case. And I have already had an interaction with Elon when he had bought Twitter and I was minister at that time, and we had said very clearly, we have absolutely no problem with what goes on in the US. But in India, there is we are a democracy, the world's biggest democracy. We have a rule of law. And there are laws on our statute book, and every platform, big or small, however connected to President Trump you are or not, you will have to abide by the Indian law. And I think that truth and that reality was the same in 2022-23 as it is in 2025.
I see. But let me go back to the law for a little bit, Chandrasekhar, because data privacy by nature, it's not really something that's constrained by borders or by geographical location. By nature, it is a global issue. So I come back to the point on, isn't there a global consensus required on which way this will go? And if yes, then what will individual country laws really achieve?
Look, this is a pretty deep, profound question, because it addresses how do you regulate the internet? Because countries have geographical borders, and the internet does not. The internet, by its very design, is ubiquitous.
Correct.
Where India finishes in its border, the internet continues on to wherever it goes, to Singapore, to Burma, to Pakistan. So there is this real issue about how do you regulate issues like crime, criminality, user harm, safety on the internet. By the way, that feeling and that concern is getting compounded with AI to the power of infinity. We know today from our own study that cybersecurity, for example, is a multi-jurisdictional crime. That cybersecurity or influence operations are mounted from one jurisdiction and the victims are in a second jurisdiction. The laws in this jurisdiction are different and the laws in this jurisdiction are different. So how do you deal with this? But frankly, in a utopian world, in an ideal world, what you say is right. We must all hug each other and agree and embrace one law. It's not going to happen. You know it, I know it. And therefore, there is only one alternate option, which is to say, we will have all our laws and we figure out a global protocol of harmonizing and making our laws work with each other.
Like an Interpol of sorts, yeah.
How do you look at the entire discussion around AI? Just a few days ago, you had Paul McCartney from the Beatles. He was saying that he worries about artists' rights, especially at a time when it's so easy to imitate an artist's sound. You've had Sam Altman comment on this too. What are your thoughts?
And I say this with I submit this with great humility and with some experience as somebody who's been around the block in tech for almost 3 decades, that AI is simply the biggest thing to happen to tech in our lifetime. You're much younger than me, but I suspect it is the biggest thing that has happened in your lifetime as well. And while there is this debate and discussion about AI doing so much more, doing more with less, creating efficiencies of the kind that is unprecedented, solving problems that have not been solved for decades in healthcare, medicine discovery, disease, agriculture, livelihoods, education, all that is true. But I think what is missing today is a discourse on the other side of AI. What are the consequences of AI on our culture, on our society, or on individuals, persons to meaning in life? What are the downsides of AI? What is it going to do? Yes, there is some conversation that has started on deep fakes and how you are able to mimic people online and elsewhere with a startling amount of accuracy and startling amount of detail that has never been done before. So there is, in my opinion, the shifts that technology has made in our lives from the PC to the internet will all seem very pale in comparison to the tectonic shifts that AI is going to bring into lives, livelihoods, and therefore society, culture, and all of that. So I think there is a big discussion that needs to be had. Too much of the discussion today is one-sided about the benefits of AI.
Right. Moving on, I just want to sort of also get your opinion on the nature of how laws are being formed on data privacy. It seems like government is constantly just playing catch up and more of a reactionary mode to what the tech world is really going to throw at us. By that I mean, take this example, it took almost 7 years to sort of get this bill into place and now it's finally getting passed. Are you worried that it'll just always stay outdated in some way, always trying to play catch up?
Look, of course I'm worried because it took almost 7 years for data protection and privacy to be ruled a fundamental right by the Supreme Court, and then it 6 years for the legislation to come out of Parliament. Yeah. So to that extent, I think the world is moving faster than how governments are moving and society is moving. Technology is innovating at warp speed, to use a Star Wars cliche, and we are not. And therefore, to that extent, we are making ourselves vulnerable if we allow the narrative of the good of technology to be unchallenged and untested. There is good that's going to come, certainly, but I think reciprocally, at the same time, there should be a much bigger scrutiny by media such as yourselves, civil society, about how do we deal with the harm aspect, the other side of the coin, the flip side of the coin, on keeping our people safe, not allowing those who have the technology to dominate the future of the world. There should be no concentration of power, concentration of wealth, concentration of tech. Technology should be inclusively available to countries that are poorer in the global south, and it should not become haves and have-nots. And at the same time, the consumers that use this technology must not be exposed to harm and criminality.
Yeah.
Okay, before we let you go, how will you be spending Data Privacy Day?
Yeah, no, so I'm going to spend Data Privacy Day on with some responsibilities that my party has given on Delhi election, but I certainly will spend some time with media such as yourselves and my own platforms to advocate or evangelize to the citizen about what their rights are, and to assert their rights and to establish their rights with all the internet platforms in India. It is something that our government worked hard for, and this is for them to understand and assert as their rights, and hopefully have a much more open, safe, and trusted internet in India, where citizens enjoy the right to a safe and trusted and privacy designed platform. So that's what I will do, and this is an ongoing process. Sonal, thank you for doing this, because I think it's important that the people whom we pass these laws for are aware of it and start asserting their rights. That is good for everybody, including the platforms.
All right, Rajeev Chandrasekhar, thank you so much for joining us, being candid as ever, calling a spade over there, and happy Data Privacy Day to